Okay, I make a motion that we reopen the meeting. Support.
Roll call. Dennison,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Marks,
Yes.
Dents, yes, Spangenbush.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna open up the meeting here for questions. I guess we'll let Ron explain this part of the meeting here.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Ron Richards from the Foster Swift Law Firm, and I was asked to come here tonight and talk about a couple issues related. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm on a Verizon commercial. Ron Richards from the Foster Swift Law Firm. I was asked to come here and talk about a couple issues. One is requiring permits and police power ordinances, and then second, talking about the differences between a police power ordinance and a zoning ordinance, and then whether any township can adopt a police power ordinance that can regulate a wind tower or wind turbine. So I will just briefly go through my opinion on those two fronts. First, it's my opinion that this township can require permits and police power ordinances. They can require licenses, they can require site plan reviews, and so any ordinance that regulates the public health, safety, or welfare is typically called a police power ordinance if it's not in a zoning ordinance. And so since Ogden does not have a zoning ordinance, can certainly still adopt a police power ordinance under the General Township Ordinance Act. So as part of regulating the public health, safety, or welfare, this township could adopt a police power ordinance, and in doing so could require permits. An example of a police power ordinance that might require a permit is a burning ordinance, where many townships require somebody before they burn leaves or whatever to first come in and get a permit. So permits are, in my opinion, fair game for a police power ordinance. The second issue is talking about the differences between a police power ordinance and a zoning ordinance, and then what you can do under a police power that you can't do under a zoning ordinance and vice versa. First, a police power ordinance is really, the way I think of it is, it's an ordinance, as I said, that regulates the public health, safety, or welfare, and it's adopted not through the zoning ordinance process. So zoning ordinances are adopted through this process. First you have to have a zoning ordinance, and then if you want to adopt an amendment to that ordinance, the township would have to have a planning commission, hold a public hearing, and then the proposed ordinance comes to the town board, and then there's consideration on whether to adopt that zoning ordinance. Zoning ordinances typically, as you probably know, regulate what can be done where in the township. So for example, a zoning ordinance might say, any property within 2 miles of this town hall must be residential. And so that's telling all of the citizens here of Ogden Township what can be done on the property near the town hall. Contrast that with a police power ordinance that regulates activities, not land, but it says if you want to do a certain activity, store junk cars for example, here are the rules that you have to follow. For example, a police power ordinance that regulates junk cars would say something like this. If you want to have a car that's not licensed, you can keep that on your property, but you have to store it in an enclosed building. That's an example of a police power ordinance that regulates junk cars. And so that ordinance doesn't tell people where you can store junk cars. You can do it on any property in the township, but it simply gives rules for if you want to do that activity, here's what you have to follow. And so police power ordinances can cover anything that regulates the public health, safety, and welfare, from burning ordinances, junk car ordinances, used car sales ordinances, noise ordinances, wind tower ordinances. Those are all, among others, topics that are fair game to regulate by a police power ordinance. The process to adopt a police power ordinance is much shorter than, and less complicated than a zoning ordinance. As I said, the zoning ordinance is adopted through this public hearing process at a planning commission. A police power ordinance is adopted without a public hearing. You can have one, but you don't have to have one. And it's adopted without any planning commission input. The board would just consider a draft ordinance, make changes if it wants, and then adopt as the board sees fit, or not adopt as the board sees fit. And so those were the issues that I was asked to talk about here tonight. I understand there's a public comment portion also
Yes.
for tonight's meeting. So I don't have anything else.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna open up the public comment. If you wanna speak, just raise your hand, I'll recognize you. If you have